61 days in, and Nancy Guthrie's still nowhere to be found. Tonight, we're looking at one specific piece of this nightmare that just don't add up. At 1:47 in the morning on February 1st, the lens on Nancy Guthrie's Tucson home just went black, cutting out the world. This wasn't some dead battery or a lucky glitch. A hand reached out and killed it. But the last few frames captured before the dark, those frames show a figure in a ski mask, walking with purpose, a sidearm strapped right there against his hip. He didn't hesitate. He didn't hunt for it in the shadows or look over his shoulder. He marched right for that lens, like he'd been there 100 times. The pros who pick apart every frame have one word for how this man moved. They call it purposeful. You don't use a word like that for some random stranger trying to find their way around a dark porch they've never seen. No, that's the word for someone who knew the layout by heart. Now, the bureau's got him officially marked as their prime suspect. They put his face out there, said he's maybe 5'9", maybe 5'10", average weight, sporting a thick black mustache under that mask. He had a 25-liter black Ozark trail pack, and he was packing heat. There's a $50,000 bounty out for his name right now. It's been 61 days, and he's still out there, lurking. Every single lead in this hunt keeps circling back to one haunting question. How did he know that camera was there in the pitch black? Before we're through here, you'll see why that one nagging thought flips the whole script on what went down that night and why the truth is going to be a lot harder to swallow than anyone's ready for. But before we get there, you got to know Nancy Guthrie. This ain't just another headline or some police report. This is a family trapped in a public hell for 2 months, staring at a silent phone, praying it rings while being scared to death of the voice on the other end. Nancy's 84. She's got a pacemaker ticking in her chest and needs meds every single day just to keep her body from giving out. When she's feeling strong, she can make it to the mailbox. When she ain't, she can't even manage the walk down her own driveway. On the night of January 31st, she sat down for a meal with her daughter Annie and her son-in-law Tommaso. They were at their place in the Catalina foothills. Once they finished, Tommaso gave her a lift back to her front door. He sat there and watched that garage door slide shut around 9:45 p.m. That's the very last time anyone can say for sure they saw her safe. The next morning, Nancy was supposed to log on and watch a church service with a friend, just like she always did. She never signed on. Her family rushed over by 11 a.m. and found the back doors standing wide open. Her phone was just sitting there on the counter. Her purse was on the table, her shoes were right where she left them, but Nancy was gone. When the deputies stepped inside, they didn't see this as some routine checkup. The state of that house was, in their own words, deeply concerning. They found blood right at the entrance. The lab confirmed it was hers. By February 2nd, that cozy home was a full-blown crime scene. Homicide detectives were already on the clock. Nancy had been snatched away while she was still in her pajamas. No shoes on her feet, no phone for help, and no medicine. Her daughter, Savannah Guthrie from the Today Show, finally spoke out, saying she wakes up every single night in the dark, her mind racing to the same place. She can't stop picturing the absolute terror her mother felt. She's terrified that her own fame is what put a bullseye on Nancy's back. She said it's a crushing weight, thinking her life brought a predator right to her mother's bedside. If that thought hits you as hard as it hit me, then you know why we can't just turn away from this. There's a shadow over this investigation that hasn't come to light yet. There's pieces of this puzzle that haven't been put together for the public, secrets the feds are holding close, things the experts have whispered. There's a new forensic test being run on the evidence from that house right now, the kind of tech that's caught killers who thought they were ghosts. It's the kind of science that finds people who don't want to be found. And when those results come back, everything we think we know is going to shift. We're staying right on top of this because the trail is still warm. Let's look back at that man in the mask and the 3 things that keep investigators awake. There are 3 specific things about that night that just won't let the detectives rest. There is one detail in the surveillance footage that forensic behavioral experts keep coming back to, and it ain't the mask. It ain't even the gun. It's something much smaller and way more gut-wrenching than a weapon or a disguise. You watch that tape close, and you'll see he didn't approach that house like a stranger would. He didn't stop at the edge of the drive to check his surroundings. He didn't look up at the windows or scan the porch facade. He walked a straight line, steady and fast through the dark, right toward a doorbell camera tucked away on a specific wall. He reached out, killed the feed, and vanished. In the world of criminal profiling, that kind of movement has a name. They call it target-specific familiarity. An expert who spent 30 years hunting kidnappers put it like this: you don't navigate to a surveillance device in the pitch black unless you've already mapped that device out in the light. So the real mystery starting this whole thing off isn't just who he is, but how he got so comfortable in Nancy's shadows. That man in the mask. Everyone's asking who handed him the blueprint to her life. But there's another piece to this puzzle, something buried, something folks just ain't talking about enough. It's a detail that deserves a hell of a lot more weight. See, at least 3 ransom letters were fired off to the press and the Guthrie kin in those agonizing days after Nancy vanished. Right after Nancy was taken, several newsrooms got these notes. They weren't some messy scribbles. They were articulated, precise, and packed with secrets about the crime scene. I'm talking about facts that weren't on the nightly news. Real inside baseball stuff. The FBI actually sat Savannah Guthrie down and showed her one of those letters. The family felt it in their gut those notes were the real deal. They went on the air desperate, pleading with whoever had their mama to just say something. They begged for proof of life. Just one sign she was okay. But those deadlines came and went like ghosts. The price tag for her return? Millions in Bitcoin. There ain't no record of a payout, and the sickos who sent those letters, they're still out there, ghosts in the machine, never named, never caught. Think about what that does to the case. If those notes had the truth about that house stuff, only the cops knew, then the author wasn't some random crank. It means whoever penned those threats was either standing in that room when she was snatched, or they were whispering with the person who was. They had a direct line to the horror. That ain't just a guess. It's the cold, hard logic of the trail they left behind. A trail that ends in a dark room. The news started confirming a third piece of this nightmare, and it's the one thing the detectives have been real quiet about lately. They're keeping it close to the chest. Savannah told NBC that when the family finally pulled up to her mom's place that morning, something was dead wrong. Those back doors were just propped open. No smashed glass, no jimmied locks, just waiting. Sheriff Chris Nanos of Pima County hasn't said a word. He won't say if the front door was kicked in or if the lock was picked. The sheriff's office is staying tight-lipped about the whole thing. They won't tell us how that monster got inside her sanctuary, but they did admit one thing. What they found inside wasn't right. It didn't look like Nancy just walked out for a stroll. From the second the badges walked in, they knew they were standing in a crime scene. The air changed the moment they crossed the threshold. 3 facts. One hunter who moved through those halls like he'd lived there his whole life. We got ransom notes with secrets only a killer would know, and a back door left ajar in a way that screams a question nobody wants to hear. It's a question that's hanging there, rotting, and the cops can't step over it. The whole case is stuck until they find the truth behind that door. Did somebody on the inside, somebody with a key or a code, know she was going to be taken? Here's the play-by-play of what went down next. Come February 10th, a guy gets pulled over in Rio Rico, maybe 60 miles south of Tucson. Just a routine stop that turned into something much darker. The FBI and the local deputies didn't waste time. They tore through a house and a car in that same dust-blown stretch of Arizona. But by the next morning, that guy was walking free. The detectives looked him up and down and decided he wasn't their man. Another dead end. Then, on February 13th, the heat shifted to a house just 2 miles from where Nancy lived. They swarmed the place for hours, shadows moving in the light. They hauled 2 people out of there. One sat in a cold room for questioning before they let him go the next day. But that wasn't all they found. They grabbed a gray Range Rover from a restaurant parking lot nearby. Inside, they found a pair of gloves, the kind that looked just like the ones the kidnapper wore. The FBI bagged those gloves, and when the lab came back, the DNA pointed right to some guy working at a local joint. The sheriff's office says he ain't part of the hit. He's cleared, Every lead they chase seems to just evaporate into the desert heat. Then the sheriff opened his mouth and changed the whole vibe. He claimed they were finally closing the gap, getting closer to putting a name to the monster. He said they were hunting someone down, but admitted there's still a lot of missing pieces they can't quite get a grip on. Like that car caught on a ring camera 2.5 miles from Nancy's place. It was 2 in the morning, drifting through the dark on the night she vanished. Then he dropped the line. A new phase. 31 days of silence, and now they're switching gears. You have to wonder what they really found. Still no handcuffs, no names, and that man in the mask is still out there, breathing the same air as us. That new phase talk, it means something. In cop speak, a new phase ain't about hitting reset. It means the hunt has changed direction. The scope is moving, focusing on something specific. And this shift? It's pointing toward a truth that the news anchors are too scared to say out loud. A truth that hits way too close to home. They ain't hunting some random prowler who just happened to see an open window. No, they're looking for someone who knew the locks. They want the person who knew the layout, the blind spots, the routine. And the one thing they can't tell the public is where that killer got his info. Where did he get the keys to her life? Now, lean in, because this is where the story takes a jagged turn that nobody's talking about. Sheriff Chris Nanos officially cleared every single member of the Guthrie family on February 16th. It's on the books. It's official. That's solid. Tommaso, the last soul to see Nancy before she was taken, passed his lie detector test with flying colors. He's off the hook. But cleared is a funny word in the law. It just means they don't think you pulled the trigger or snatched the victim. It doesn't mean you weren't a link in the chain. It doesn't mean you didn't accidentally hand the map to the devil himself. Just think about what it takes to pull this off. You'd need to know the hallways, the heavy doors, and where the cameras are hiding in the shadows. You'd need to know the exact routine of an 84-year-old woman who can't move like she used to. You'd need to know her every move. You'd need to know exactly when the car drops her off and exactly when the lights go out and the house goes silent. That kind of knowledge ain't cheap. Just a few people hold the truth, and every soul among them claims to love Nancy Guthrie. The sheriff says they're all broken and helping, but an expert in targeted snatchings sees a darker pattern. When a predator moves through a house like he owns it, investigators look for the inside leak. They don't just look at who did the deed, they look at who paved the way. They map every person who might have dropped a secret, whether it was a slip or a setup, a casual talk, a schedule mention, or a word about a camera being shifted. In the wrong ears, those slips become a blueprint for a hit, and nobody's truly off the hook yet. This ain't just a guess. It's the gritty architecture of how a targeted crime is actually built. That framework is how the FBI is grinding through 13,000 tips since this nightmare started. That's a massive, heavy number, and somewhere in the pile is a truth finally waiting to scream. If something's been eating at you, some small weird thing you ignored, it is time to speak up. That tip line is open, and the family's put up $1 million to bring Nancy home. 61 days since she vanished, and the eyes of the world are fixed on every move these agents make. This is where forensic genetic genealogy steps in, and it's the biggest play they've got right now. When cops find DNA at a scene but hit a dead end, this tech changes the game. They take that ghost of a sample and hunt for family, for any partial genetic match. Relatives and distant cousins who share enough blood to point toward a specific dark bloodline. From that single branch, the hunters work their way out, building the whole family tree. They pin down the geography and cross-reference every scrap of evidence until the circle tightens up. This ain't science fiction or a lab experiment. It's a proven way to catch devils. Back in 2018, it finally unmasked the Golden State Killer after he'd hid for 40 years. In 2022, it cornered Brian Koberger for those 4 murders at the University of Idaho. Both those men thought they were ghosts because their DNA wasn't in any police file. They were dead wrong, and the DNA from Nancy Guthrie's home is being processed right now. Cops confirmed they've turned to this genetic grinder because the standard searches didn't give them anything. An expert says this takes time and might pull up dozens of relatives needing investigation. That last part is the key. They aren't just hunting one man, they're hunting a family. Somewhere in that family tree is a thread leading straight back to that front door in the dark. A thread that ends at the Catalina foothills at 1:47 in the morning. A second front is open right now, and Google joined the hunt on February 18th. They're digging for extra footage from Nancy's land since the doorbell camera was ripped away. Those intact cameras have footage that hasn't seen the light of day yet, and it's heavy. If they pull clean images from those dark hours, we might see exactly who was there. We're talking about ghosts or vehicles near that house that nobody has accounted for yet. The sheriff says a car was caught 2.5 miles away around 2 a.m. That vehicle's identity is still a mystery, and nobody's saying if the home footage matches it. That silence from the law isn't an accident. It's a tactical choice in a high-stakes game. In this investigation, what they don't say is just as loud as the things they do. They ain't saying the DNA is done, and they ain't saying they found the note's author. They're just saying the hunt is on until Nancy Guthrie is finally pulled from the dark. At 61 days, that kind of talk means the engines are still hot and running fast. The tools are live, and that window for a miracle hasn't slammed shut quite yet. Right now, over 13,000 tips are being shredded and analyzed by the federal agents. $1 million bounty from the Guthrie family is still sitting there, waiting for a name. The FBI's $50,000 reward for an arrest is still on the table, waiting for the truth. The lab's currently grinding through that forensic genetic genealogy. Technicians are pulling every last frame of footage with Google's help, and a 24-hour command center packed with FBI critical incident agents ain't stopped digging through the mountain of data pouring in. This ain't some dusty file in a basement. It's a red-hot manhunt with federal muscle that hasn't even thought about letting up. There is a vital piece of this puzzle that most news reports are completely tripping over. Those gloves, the feds picked up the ones that looked like a dead ringer for what the prowler wore in that grainy doorbell clip. They came back to a local kitchen worker who was cleared. But the sheriff's office dropped a hint that there's a whole different set of DNA they're sweating over. It wasn't the gloves. It's something different. A secret piece of biology they're keeping close to the vest. That's what the genealogy experts are hunting for right now. The noose ain't tightening slowly. It's being pulled shut by tech that never misses its target. Now, we hit the wall, the part of this nightmare that's still wide open, and it's the heaviest weight to carry. Nancy Guthrie shared a meal with her folks on the evening of January 31st. There was laughter, most likely. Just normal small talk, probably, before her son-in-law pulled into her driveway and watched the garage door seal shut. That was the last time she was ever safe inside those four walls. Nancy's got a pacemaker that needs constant checking. She's got meds her heart literally can't survive without. They snatched her in her sleepwear, no shoes, no phone, none of the essentials a woman needs for the hell that followed. 61 days have crawled by, and the cops haven't pinned a name on anyone. No handcuffs have clicked shut. They won't even say if Nancy is still breathing. Her kin have begged before the cameras, pleading for just one sign. She's okay. They're ready to negotiate. They're all ears. 2 separate ransom dates came and went like ghosts. But get this, the machine ain't stopped. The biological code is processing. The footage is being sharpened. Every lead is being vetted. The genealogy team is growing a family tree that always leads to a doorstep. This math don't lie. And in this specific hunt, with all this federal weight behind it, it ain't a matter of if the lab finds them. It's just a matter of when. Somewhere in the dark tonight, a person knows the truth. Maybe it's a bit of talk they caught in a bar, a tiny detail they brushed off weeks ago. Maybe it's a secret they've been choking on for 61 days, wondering if it's worth a call. It is. The Fed's tip line is wide open. The cash reward is waiting, and we ain't turning our backs on this woman. As soon as a lead cracks, we'll be right here. There ain't no giving up. Because when that forensic map is finished, when the frame-by-frame extraction reveals a face, when the trap finally snaps shut on the person who dragged Nancy Guthrie into the night, we're going to be there to see justice served. We need to know exactly what went down. The folks tracking every shadow of this case are already whispering. The truth is hiding in plain sight. The camera's gone, the lab's humming, and Nancy Guthrie is still gone. 6 weeks in, an old-school FBI hand made a statement that the big networks completely missed. It was buried in a minor interview. He claimed Savannah Guthrie's plea on national television wasn't just some random outburst. This guy has spent a lifetime hunting missing souls, and he saw a clear, calculated operation at work. The specific words she used, the timing of it all, looked like a script written by the sheriff, the FBI, and the Guthrie family working as one. And those goals were razor sharp. They wanted to make Nancy real to the world, to put a face to the name. They wanted to rattle the cage of whoever has her, showing them the family ain't blinked yet. That ain't cold, it's pure strategy. And in a hunt that's dragged on past 60 days without a single sign of life, strategy is the only thing keeping the trail from going cold forever. See, here's the ugly truth about these abductions when you hit the 2-month mark. The media packs up. The news vans find a newer, fresher tragedy. The sheriff stops calling the press every week. The phone stops ringing. And the family is left drowning in a silence that's worse than the first scream. In the beginning, at least there was some noise. You could tell yourself that every passing hour might bring a miracle. Now, the Pima County authorities are saying they're refocusing their team. That kind of talk scares people. It sounds like giving up. But you got to hear the rest of it. This is still a hot case, and they ain't stopping until Nancy Guthrie is found or there's nowhere left to look. Burned out. That ain't the talk of an agency ready to just pack it in and head home. That's the sound of a department hunkering down, digging their heels in for a long, ugly war. Here's the cold, hard truth, backed up by the guys in uniform on the official record. Nancy Guthrie vanished from her home in the Catalina foothills of Tucson, Arizona, back on February 1st. That pool of blood staining her front door? Lab techs matched the DNA. It was hers, every drop. A man in a mask, packing heat, showed up on the doorbell cam the morning she went dark. Then, the camera just vanished. Ripped off the wall. Nobody's seen it since. Someone didn't want us watching. Sheriff Chris Nanos officially crossed every member of the Guthrie family off the suspect list on February 16th. Investigators are now tracing the family trees of the DNA they scraped off the floor, hunting for a ghost. 13,000 tips poured into the FBI. Still, no names, no handcuffs, just a lot of empty noise. That's the skeleton of this nightmare. Every word of it has been sworn to on the official record, or verified by several news desks. But then there's the talk that ain't been signed off on yet. You need to know what's real and what's just static. Ashley Banfield put it out there on her show. Pointing to a source in the force, she claimed Tommaso was their main guy, the prime target. The Pima County Sheriff's Office shut that down fast. They hit back hard and heavy against that story. They said they didn't have a single suspect, and Sion sat for the polygraph. He passed with flying colors. Like the rest of the kin, he was cleared. But that rumor, it's still rotting away on the internet. Don't swallow it as truth just because it's out there. No badge has ever put their name on it. Word is, those ransom notes sent to the family and the press were packed with specific, ugly details. Things only a killer would know about that house. The cops haven't whispered a word about what's inside. The FBI let Savannah Guthrie see one. The family told the world they think those letters are the real deal. They even said they reached back out to whoever is keeping their mother in the dark. We don't know if a real conversation ever happened between the family and that shadow. No one's saying. A car popped up on a doorbell cam 2.5 miles out from Nancy's place at 2 a.m. The night she vanished, that car was there. The sheriff calls it just another lead they can't tie up. Nobody knows what kind of car it was. We don't even know if it belongs in this story at all. Profilers watched that doorbell footage and saw how the masked man moved. He looked like he'd been there before. He knew the layout. But the FBI? They ain't ready to call that an official fact just yet. Neither the FBI nor Pima County is signing off. It's just experts guessing based on what we've all seen. It ain't a solid finding from the boots on the ground. And that distinction matters when a life is on the line. When a family is this famous and the pain is this raw, the truth starts to get real blurry real fast. Once that boundary is gone, the folks in the middle of the storm are the ones who get hit hardest. Savannah Guthrie said in March that the lies people were telling about her sister Annie were just too much to take. They dragged Tommaso through it too. Nobody loved or looked after Nancy better than those two did. There ain't no way to describe what that kind of talk does to a family that's already bleeding out. She's right to be angry. You can feel for her and still look at the facts. It ain't a contradiction. It's just the messy, jagged reality of a case with no ending. Here's what this hell has done to them. Annie Guthrie picked up the phone and called Savannah on the morning of February 1st. Her voice must have shook. She said their mom was gone. Not lost, not missing, just gone. Like she'd been erased from the world. Annie stepped inside and knew right then something terrible had happened. Something you can't ever fix. Savannah caught the first flight to Tucson. Since then, she's been forced to carry this heavy cross in front of everyone. She stood there in the spotlight while her own coworkers talked about her mother like she was just another headline. She's had to answer for ransom notes and grainy footage, all while wondering if her family is even safe. She begged a complete stranger to just say something, anything. Please, just reach out and tell them she's okay. Nancy Guthrie ain't just a news story. She's a woman who sat at a dinner table one Tuesday in January, probably laughing. Just regular stuff, probably still chuckling at some silly thing her grandson Mo did earlier, before she hopped in her car and drove home. She sat there in the driver's seat, watching the same old streets she'd known for decades roll past the glass. She pulled into her garage. The door rattled shut behind her, and she didn't have a single reason to think that night was going to be any different from every other night she'd spent in the home where she raised her kids. She was in her pajamas when they grabbed her. That is a detail we can't just let pass by. Pajamas mean she was either winding down for the night or already dead to the world in her own bed. It means she was completely defenseless in the one spot on earth that's supposed to be a sanctuary. And someone sat there and planned for that exact second. Her pacemaker needs watching, and the meds she takes every day, the same meds left sitting on the kitchen counter when her family found the house empty, they ain't optional. Her body just can't function without them. Early on, the sheriff called her a vulnerable adult because of her age and her needs. She struggled to get around, and she needed those pills. 61 days have passed without her medicine, no doctors, no shoes, and not a single shred of proof she's even still breathing. That's the cold, hard truth of it. Forget the lab work and the profilers and the tips flooding into the command center 24 hours a day. There's an 84-year-old woman at the center of this who deserves to be home. Her family's been waiting. For 61 days in a quiet so loud, the rest of the country has already started to tune it out. Annie and Tommaso Chione were spotted at Nancy's place right after Savannah's interview. They paced the yard, stayed a bit, then vanished. The internet went wild, guessing what that visit meant, or if it meant the cops were finally closing in on something. People wondered if the family was giving up on the house because they knew something the rest of us didn't. The sheriff stayed quiet, the FBI stayed quiet, the family didn't say a word. That silence starts to feel heavy. Because after 61 days, one thing is still true. Nobody who actually knows what happened to Nancy Guthrie is talking. Whoever set this up, whoever dragged her out of there, whoever fed them info about that house and her routine is keeping their mouth shut. And that specific wall of silence is the only thing the cops can't break down yet. Tech and money and science can't force a confession. Eventually, the DNA is going to point to a specific family tree. Some grain of footage might show a car or a face. One of those 13,000 tips might be the key to the lock. But the quickest way to find Nancy is for someone to grow a conscience. That image of her in her nightclothes, snatched from the one place she felt safe, is the shadow that follows you when the lab reports are put away. All that's left is a family staring into a void they can't fill. So let's look at where we go from here. Genetic tracing doesn't move fast. The experts say this kind of deep dive into the genes takes a hell of a long time. They might find 10 different branches of a family tree that all need checking, and the cops can't afford to rush it. If they hurry, they mess up the evidence. But history shows us exactly how this tech usually ends up. A case this big, with this much federal muscle behind it, has never failed to cough up a name eventually. It ain't a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. Meanwhile, Google is still pulling data from those home cameras. They're looking at weeks of footage from before she was taken, checking every landscaper and pool guy who stepped foot there. The cops combed through the family visits and the workers, but they didn't find anything that looked wrong. Everything looked normal, right up until February 1st. But that tiny window of time on the night she vanished, those hours around 1:47 a.m. are everything. If any lens caught a shadow or a flicker of movement, a car or a figure that hasn't been identified yet, that's where the next bombshell is going to come from. The mystery of the ransom notes is still hanging over everything. They haven't been cleared up at all. 3 notes were sent, 2 deadlines came and went, no one saying if a single dollar was ever paid out. The feds won't say if the family talked to the kidnapper, and those insider details in the letters stay secret. Investigators are keeping that close to the chest. That trail is still hot. The writer knows what's in those pages. And the FBI knows too. That secret they both share is a kind of pressure that only gets heavier every day. That weight doesn't go away. The $1 million reward the family put up is still sitting there, unclaimed, just waiting for someone to talk. The FBI's $50,000 reward for her recovery stays on the table for anyone who brings her back. Someone just needs to talk. Leads for a name or an arrest are still being chased. 13,000 tips have been logged at a 24-hour command center that ain't closing its doors. That critical incident team, the same heavy hitters FBI uses for their most urgent, high-stakes hunts, is still glued to this file. This ain't a case that's just going cold. It's being kept alive by pure stubbornness and the full weight of the feds until an answer finally screams. Here is what former FBI agent Harry Trombitis had to say about where this nightmare stands right now. There's still folks out there who don't have a clue that Nancy Guthrie is even gone. Every time her face reaches someone new, every time her story lands in front of a stranger who hasn't seen it yet, there's a real shot that the secret they're holding, that weird thing they saw, or some whisper they heard, might finally, painfully just click into place. That ain't some poetic metaphor. That's exactly how these monsters get caught. It isn't always about the lab work or the science. Sometimes it's just someone staring at a screen at 11 p.m., seeing a face they'd almost forgotten, and realizing they know the truth. If that's you, the FBI line is open. Dial 1-800-CALL-FBI. The family reward line is a different number, and those details are all listed right here for you. You don't need to be 100% sure to make that call. You just need one detail. One scrap of info can break a case that the feds spent years trying to crack with every tool in their shed. We've been following this case since the very start, and we ain't stopping until Nancy Guthrie is finally brought home. You're deeper into the gears of this hunt than the folks who just scan the morning headlines for a thrill. Those forensic genealogy results ain't gonna wait for a scheduled press conference before they change everything. There won't be any warning or a quiet preview when that footage extraction finally gives up its secrets. When the break comes, it's gonna be fast and heavy, and it's gonna change this story in a heartbeat. That doorbell camera's gone. The man in the mask, he still ain't been named. And Nancy Guthrie, she's still missing.